Good afternoon. This is Professor Amanal Dean with Critical Talk, which is a production of Muslim Network TV. And I hope all of you have been listening to us because we've been doing some dynamic shows, and we have another one for you today. Today, we're going to discuss Isabel Wilkerson's book, Caste. And for those of you who don't know Isabel Wilkerson, let me just introduce her to you. In 1994, while Chicago bureau chief of the New York Times, she became the first woman of African American heritage to win the Pulitzer Prize in journalism. She also won the George S. Polk Award, a Guggenheim Fellowship, and a Journalist of the Year Award from the National Association of Black Journalists. After 15 years, she wrote her first published work, The Warmth of Other Suns, which we all want to encourage you to read. It's the epic story of America's Great Migration. She wrote this text in 2010, which examines three geographic routes that were commonly used by African Americans leaving the southern states between 1915 and 1970. In 2002, here we come with caste. The origins of our discontents in the New York Times describes it as an instant American classic, and all of my guests do also. So I encourage you, and I got some good late breaking news that award-winning documentary and film specialist Ava, and I can't pronounce his name, DuVernay, will write, direct, and produce a film adaptation of Caste. So that is extra news. And today I'd like to introduce my guest. We have with us Amina Mitchell. She's a doctoral candidate at the University of Illinois at Chicago and fighting the pandemic when they're in class, not in class so much. She has worked at Chicago's Department of Education and Psychology, and that's what she's in school for, if I'm not mistaken. She's a member of our book club, which is a Black and Brown women's book club. And she enjoys everything about this book, and I'm sure we'll have loads to comment on today. Secondly, we have Maria Massoud, who is a retired DePaul University faculty in modern languages. And I have to admit, me and my Spanish lessons have been on hold. But I'm getting back to them. She's 30 years experience with concentration in Spanish language, translation, and Latin American politics and culture. Lastly, but certainly not the least, we have Sandra Jackson, who is a professor emeritus of women and gender studies. Oh gosh, she has so many areas of interest, but also expertise, gender studies, race, intersectionality, feminist studies, women's literature. And she left off one of the things I love about her work, which is looking at the literature of young people. And she works on the Journal of African and Black Diaspora. Welcome, all of you. You can see yourselves and constantly adjust, but we want to see all of you. And I hear an echo. Nevertheless, who is Isabel? Anybody? Sandra Jackson. Who is Isabel Wilkerson?
Well, you gave. The only thing I would add is that she's a journalist, but she draws on cultural histories, experiences of African Americans. She's clearly well read international politics and culture. And I find that she writes in a very engaging metaphors, analogies, and very creative writing and non-cliche what she's talking about.
Maria, Isabel Wilkerson.
Well, she is a fabulous writer, and she's also written The Warmth of Other Suns, for which she won a Pulitzer Prize. A fabulous book that I highly recommend. And when this book came out, I was so very happy, particularly because she's dealing with a topic I did not know much about, and tended to confuse between race and caste. But little did I know until I read her. And so I think she's a fabulous person, a must read person.
Amina Mitchell.
Isabel Wilkerson is not only is she a journalist, she seems to be a top-notch researcher, because everything she says in both of her books, she backs up with facts and references, good references.
So how you ladies read widely and read far more than I do. What genre is this in? Is it a combination of genre, or does it fit squarely in one?
I think
Talk
it goes. Oh.
to everybody. Look, just talk. It's a conversation.
Go ahead, Maria.
I think she goes into more than one genre, because definitely historical, but it's also anthropological, cultural anthropology, sociology, and of course the bottom grounded in the economics of it all. Why
Yeah.
did caste begin? What makes it work? And so there are numerous genres in her book.
Yeah.
But of course, she is a journalist, so she's going to be providing a lot of evidence of what she says. You know, a lot of support, research support.
So Jackson, what do you think of the style?
Several things. I like the way she clearly has done her research. She defines her, love her use of metaphor and analogy. You know, for example, when she talks about the permafrost and leaching into the environment, she's talking about pervasive tentacles of race coordination of other people and inequalities in power and status. When she talks akin to being an old house where the current owners are not responders, but as inhabitants, they have the burden and the responsibility to bring the house up to code. And then she draws upon her own personal history and encountering gender discrimination. But then she also draws on the experiences of others, particularly from India.
You know, one of the things, and I'm glad you brought that up on how the book opens, because you don't know what you're reading then. You expect one thing, Amina Mitchell, and then you get a little treatment of cell biology, a little beginning of biology, and you say, oh, what the hell am I reading? How did that strike you?
Well, it was interesting how she kind of weaves it all together so that it becomes a picture taken at a different angle than we've ever thought about before.
Yeah.
And that's I think that's one of the strengths of this book, is that it, you read a lot of covers and you say, oh, this again.
Yeah.
And this, as you read, you realize that this is a new way of looking at a subject that we all recognize and have lived through. But because it's weaved in a different way, in a different pattern, some of the nuances are different, and you begin to see how it is different.
Okay, well, I'm going to wake you ladies up and send you off to get some coffee, and I'm going to work on a little technology problem that we're having because we all need. This is a very important conversation, so we're going to take a 2-minute break. This is Professor Amina Al-Din, and I'm speaking with Sandra Jackson, Amina Mitchell, and Maria Massoud on the book Caste, and we'll be right back.
Billboards are popping up all over the country with an
Our neighbors don't realize that Muslims are absolutely opposed to ISIS.
Salam. My name is Abdul Malik Mujahid. I'm an imam in Chicago.
16 shots! No peace! No justice! No peace!
So how do we bring up the energy which can really have an impact on the world? You need to build bridges of understanding among people, and we need to have America moving forward. That lesson learned have brought the strength of humanity to America, which is the diversity.
Mujahid Talks, only on Muslim Network TV. Faithfully connected.
This is Professor Amina Al-Din, and we are back with a chat, lively conversation, early afternoon. Get coffee, wake up. Very important book. But before we get into the nitty gritty, I want to go back to the style, because in nonfiction, people try lots of different things. We notice heading each chapter, I think, is a quote. We're taking off into biological comparisons, all kinds of comparisons. So it doesn't fit one genre, but is it an epic? Sandra, is it an epic?
It's an epic. I think she's writing about an epical phenomenon history of caste systems, using India as kind of point of origin.
Well, let's talk
and
about
so developing a social hierarchy. But the book is not an epic to me, a diagnosis. She's looking at a problem, a cancer, a disease, a virus that is not operating well. She wants us to know that we're all infected. And in the end, to bring about change, noting that it will be serious and it will not be.
Okay. Amina Mitchell, what do you think? Is it an epic?
I agree with Sandra there that the topic is epic. Whether her work is I guess really jury's still out. Because it's we're
gonna wait as long as the Aeneid and the old white men that we don't know if they really existed, kind of stuff. What do you have to say, Maria? Is it an epic?
When I read it, I didn't perceive it to be an epic. I was very taken by the depth of field that she had to clarify her thesis on caste, and how she developed the theme very step by step with plenty of examples. So if you had some doubts of perhaps I didn't understand this, there was an example or two that came along. I think what was surprising to me was towards the end, which we discussed in the reading group, not offering many ways of resolving the problem.
Okay, but before we get there,
Okay.
let's get to why caste. Jackson, you started us with we'll say this problem that's everywhere. It's like a disease. All of us get infected, which is not making me feel great right now. But why caste? Why do you think she went to India? What do you think led her there?
Well, I think because the caste system, the levels, and then that separate each other based on location, respect, wealth, but also within each caste, there are and difference. And I think she kind of thought about going to the source, or one of the most full-blown examples of a social hierarchy.
So that's how come,
as she said, it and fixed, and you don't easily get out of it. And how can I use understanding that in Germany and the US to look at the predicament of African Americans? And I think she would add analyzed in a society. So I saw her as kind of going to a source or the source.
okay, Mitchell?
Well, repeat
Come
the
on,
question.
wake up, ladies.
I mean, say, repeat the question.
Huh?
Repeat the question.
Why caste?
I think it has to do with her research into her first book, because I noticed that that some of the themes that were like just beginning to sprout in her first book, she brings to a full bloom in this book.
So you're saying that once one looks at migrations, it puts down seeds.
Yeah. Yeah.
And led us over to caste. Well, it seems to me that caste going there put a larger picture out there for race relations. Where do they fit? No, it's not just you. And the Dalit in India, as Sandra Jackson was saying, they can't get out of where they are. They can travel, you know, those that manage to make 5 cents, but they're still in their, and if they meet their ethnic others out there at different levels, the ethnic other immediately identifies you as to where you should be, which is what Black and brown people find wherever it is they go. So when we say why caste, because she's been critiqued about using the term caste, and she goes on to say race, you know, I think caste is the bones, as one of our reading group members said, and that race is the skin on the bone. And she taught race is fluid, right?
But caste, to me, goes to answer the questions that sometimes we don't know why things happens. For example, when people say, "Why are these people voting against their interests?"
They're
And
voting for
then she opens up the door and she says, "Because when it comes to deciding the larger picture, they're always going to side with white."
Right.
Regardless of their gender and their station in life, they always want to be closer to the goal. And so she explains this very clearly. And caste explains it because it's something we're born into it. We don't get to build it as we go.
Yeah.
What we see are the external expressions via racism, but we still are unable to answer why do they vote against their interests until we understand caste
Well,
and the way we stratified it.
after reading this book, I find myself constantly referring to it, Sandra Jackson. What and you brought out some things. Does using her giving us a more transcendent term to place ourselves as we're still unique. She doesn't say that we're just like the Dalit. We're still unique. She uses the Holocaust to talk about that corralling of people and their abilities to do this, that, and the other, and identity formation.
Mm.
What has it done for you?
It continues to kind of give us a sense of how this social construction worked on time, throughout time, and how it has operated in different societies. Group, one of the things I said was I enjoyed her book. She connected the dots, and clearly way to look at the social system. What I said was I am talking about the interrelationship of caste and class. When we've looked at the problems of inequality in Black people, vis-a-vis white men, race and class, and caste has not always been used. Talks about the reason why this system is so powerful. It affects how people see themselves and how others see them. And her argument is that elected. And she gives the example, I think, going to a conference, this young man, I think well known, doing well, he still at times doubts his ability and social standing, even though at a conference people are responding to him with a lot of respect. He still feels.
This is very interesting. We're going to take another one of our famous 2-minute breaks, but I want to come back because Sandra has introduced something into our conversation, which the Dalit get to, but we don't talk too much about here in the society, and that's the notion of class. How does all of this fit together? When we come back, I'm going to start with Amina Mitchell. This is Professor Amina Al-Din on Critical Talk. We're talking today about caste. Isabel Wilkerson's definitely going to win a bunch of awards book. We'll be right back.
Assalamu alaikum!
I love Adam's World because it makes me learn in a fun way. That Adam has a green face and orange hair. I like this song. I like how Adam sings. I like Adam's World because it makes me happy. What? No. And here's Adam and here's Anissa. Adam and his sister. Adam is a boy and he is very smart.
Download the new Adam's World app at adamsworldapp.com and let's help tomorrow's Muslims today.
welcome back. This is Professor Amina Al-Din and Critical Talk, a production of Muslim Network TV. And as I said, we're coming back to some notions that Sandra Jackson threw in our conversation, especially the one about class. Often in the Black and Brown communities, we have our own notions of, excuse me, class. We also know that there's another system of class to which our president belongs, right? Where they're up on the top of the mountain looking down at everybody else. But if we put all the pieces together, because class, as one comment that you can't see, says class is deeper than race. Lots of our writings, and you can challenge that issue, have been about race and the injuries suffered to race. But what about class, Amina Mitchell?
I think class also makes a difference, and it, class is different and perceived differently, and different rules based on where you are in the caste system. And some of that some of the rules for class supersede where you are, in the sense that it's based on that need or desire to be the dominant group within the caste system. So sometimes it's what's considered class. Like, for example, I'm thinking when I grew up, the more you acted like the dominant class, the white people, the classier you were. Yeah. So
it's affected behavior. And as one writer talks about, Pierre Bourdieu, is we begin to mimic. People in higher classes travel. They talk about wines and foods from around the world. And it differentiates even within your caste, then it becomes those lower than you, right?
Right.
That you want to mess with regard to helping them be better, helping them improve themselves, etc. But let me give each of you 10 minutes. I'm not 10, 2 minutes. If you had to summarize this book that you were going to talk about on NPR or somewhere, let me just tell you about this book. What would you say? Jump in.
Well, I think she develops her argument about the power of caste consequences and persistence, I think, very, very well. I think it is what she gives the 8 pillars. So if someone needs more than just, she gives you principles upon which this hinges.
Can you give those pillars?
And she draws international issues from those 3 countries. So I think she leaves a picture of business and structured caste this is how it operates. And it's for these reasons that it is.
Can you give us those 8 pillars?
Those principles?
Yeah.
Yes. Divine will and laws of nature. Like, that's the way it's supposed to be. Some to be superior, other people are born to be inferior. And those conquer and conduct genocide. She talks about heritability. Inherit some things that were given to you naturally. That's another link in the chain. She talks about marriage and mating. And we know historically what has happened between Black and white people, particularly looking at, winking at, trying to be with white women, lynching, castrations, etc. Purity versus pollution. We cannot mix and mingle with you. We cannot live with you because you're dirty and inferior and will infect us. She talks about occupational vacation. Because you are by nature inferior, you need to do the dirty work in prohibited areas.
Yeah.
You need to do the work that doesn't garner much. The last three, dehumanization and stigma. Again, othering. You're less than human. You don't deserve or do that. And then she talks about the other things, particularly we've been aware of in African American, as enforcement, cruelty as a means of control. So when you get out of line, there are dangerous consequences, and our history has been peppered with that. And then she ends with authority versus inherent inferiority, which goes all the way back to divine will, the way things have been from the beginning. So how dare you think you're going to step out of the script and different? That's going to cause a problem in the whole society when you jump out of place and come out of place in relationship to you. So you need to stay in your place and be quiet and be good. Or else.
I'm laughing because it's so true. It is so true. And there have been very few books which have stuck with me like this one. So, Maria, what sticks with you?
With me is the idea that she clarifies why race alone does not explain why people in minority groups don't seem to be able to advance, to move up the scale of that hierarchy, and it's only when she goes deeper that we understand this invisible hand that holds you down. And she goes further to explain it in terms of not only individual to individual, but the country itself. When somebody in the upper hierarchy gets out of line, there is punishment. And she brings the example of Johnson, Lyndon Johnson, when he signed the Civil Rights Act, 5. Since then to the present day, no Democratic presidential candidate has won the majority of white America.
Wow.
And so that is that's a punishment.
Yeah.
How dare you down from your status to try to raise the status of those that we don't perceive as deserving. So this book really give the examples, clarify with no exception what she means by caste and race. Class, on the other hand, is important, but I don't think she talked about it in her book.
Right.
At least I didn't see it that much, if at all.
Okay.
So,
Nina Mitchell, what sticks with you from this text?
I think two things is, first of all, it provides a framework in which to put a lot of experiences that you knew were wrong, and you knew others were experiencing them too. And this gives you a framework in which you can say, aha, so that's what was going on. Because a lot of times some of those experiences, the question, I think even for young children, is, well, why? Why do you do this? Why did you think this? Why? And this kind of starts to explain what's going on. And I think that's what makes this book, when it becomes epic, it'll be because it has started to change how people think and talk about the relationship between different people of different views.
No, that's perfect. And when we look at recent and current situations like COVID-19 and minority populations, does the book, Sandra Jackson, give you a different way to understand what's going on?
A different way to what? I didn't get the last part.
To understand what's happening with COVID and minority populations.
I don't think it's a different way, comprehensive and complex way to look at why we have the health disparities. People don't have access to health care.
Right.
They don't have access to health. And the lives that many Black people and people of color live are that you have other, what are now called prior existing conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have that wonder that Black people and other people of color are dying and suffering those ways. And so I think the book helps understand what a deep problem and why there's so many challenges. And what happened, equity and equality, for me.
No, it's great. We're, believe it or not, going to take another quick break. And when we come back, we want to think about, after reading this book, what do you understand about red and blue stuff and this election stuff and how people are acting? This is Professor Amin Al-Din with Critical Talk, which is a production of Muslim Network TV. And I am with three honored guests, Amina Mitchell, Maria Massoud, and Sandra Jackson. And we'll be right back.
Assalamu alaikum everyone, it's your brother Zain Bika from South Africa. One of the first educational programs ever produced for Muslim children was the ever popular Adam's World series. The colorful and comical Muslim puppets stole the heart of a generation. Sound Vision will be releasing brand new episodes of Adam's World with the launch of a Adam's World app. Subscribers will enjoy new Adam's World episodes as they are released, as well as all the classic episodes of Adam's World. So visit adamsworldapp.com now to learn more, subscribe, and enjoy new adventures of Adam and his friends. And let's keep helping tomorrow's Muslims today. Assalamu alaikum.
Adam's World. Believe me, there's a lot to see. Bismillah. Let's explore.
We are back. This is Professor Amin Al-Din with Critical Talk, which is a production of Muslim Network TV. And I am discussing caste and everything else under the sun with Amina Mitchell, Maria Massoud, and Sandra Jackson. I would like to pose, looking at recently released statistics, Latinos and African Americans increased their support of Trump. I'm thinking that they're more than they asked that increased their support of Trump. Is that class? I mean, he brings economic value to those who invested in the stock market. Or is it a vote against Biden, who has some interesting baggage? Is it a vote against Kamala Harris, which people didn't take well to, and are praying if Biden wins that they can put a stick in his back so that he both stays awake and stays there for 4 years. What's going on? Jackson, I see your eyebrows moving. Talk to me.
Well, I'm thinking that can help understand what's going on. I mean, I'm looking at son-in-law, a recent interview, and he's talking
He's pitiful
about things and issues, and his retort is, they have to want to. You look at the idea of Bill Barr and others saying that there's racism, and therefore there's no reason for police reform. You look at the Lives Matter movement, which has been organized in protest of the death of Black people, primarily as well, that has now come by some to be seen as a terrorist organization. The Black movement for democracy is threatening. And so we have long lines and thousands of ballots. We have limitations on polling stations. And we also have the question of, if Trump doesn't win, meaning if he fails, he's been cheated out of something, which negates the social issues raised by people of color, particularly around race and class and gender. To understand why people are voting for what I think is let's leave things alone. Let's not invite too many more of them in, because they're going to join and recognizable. So I think it's a clear indication of why people are behaving at the state.
Amina Mitchell, what do you think is going on? How does Caste help us understand anything other than extreme anxiety?
Well, I think that in my interpretation, it's the idea that the dangling out that you too can be part of the dominant group.
Yeah.
So that is a constant. You see how as time went on, it went from only if you were from England or your ancestors were from England, were you the dominant group. Then it went to include others, Europeans that had immigrated, and they eventually were allowed to be part of the dominant group. And so I think it's dangled out there constantly that, in the hue of diversity, which that's a loaded term, but in the hue of diversity, you too can be considered part of the dominant group. And I think that's what a lot of people are thinking, that if I go up the social ladder or the economic ladder, I get closer to that quote unquote whiteness.
Yeah. Maria, I'm going to give you the last minute and a half on this intriguing subject. I'm going to ask all of you to be back, because we'll either be smiling or saying, oh, man, in a few days. Maria, go ahead.
I find it that is, well, I think we touched bases on this earlier, but it has to do with identifying with the group that's in control, in charge, and finding certain elements that adhere to what the white group have. I'm thinking in terms of the Cuban community in Miami, the way they voted, majority for Trump. And the ideology is something that they can adhere to, because Trump was telling them, if you don't vote for me, communism is going to come over, and it's going to take care of, it's going to do all kinds of damages to Venezuela, to Cuba, to you name it. And that's a fear that has been built throughout the years, and so it addresses their reality. So they felt comfortable and voted for Trump. However, it's interesting when you go back in the record and then you see that they too voted for Hillary.
Yeah.
In a vast majority. So at the time, the choices, they preferred Hillary to Sandy, because Sandy was a communist.
Yeah.
So there was no other choice. And then on the Republican side, I forget who the Republican was against Hillary. Does anyone remember? I forget now. But I think that's what it is. It's trying to align with the group that is going to give you prestige. And now when they read the news and they see that the Cuban community aligned with Trump, so that makes them feel secure that Trump and Trump organization is not going to forget them, and that they'll be positively benefiting from that.
Well, they can take it from me. Trump won't even know him. But
well,
what I want to do in a future conversation is I want to analyze what has happened here, and I want to use caste as my lens. Okay, because there's some very particular things going on. I'm gonna mix you all with some political scientists and one journalist I met he used to be a journalist with Telemundo, and we want to look and see what it is we actually have. And I want to thank all of you for your time. I know we're still in anxious times, so forgive me for trying to wake you up, because I know you've been up all night listening to the darn news. But we will be back when at least we know the outcome. This is Professor Amanal Dean with Critical Talk. I've had a wonderful hour with Sandra Jackson, Abina Mitchell, and Maria Masood. Thank all of you for listening. We'll be back.